Welcome to Lawyer Business Advantage. This podcast is dedicated to helping attorneys earn more money, get better clients, and spend more time with family. I'm your host, Alay and founder of Law Firm Success Group. Smart business guidance for small law firms begins in 3, 2, 1. And it's my pleasure to welcome back to Lawyer Business Advantage, Chelsea Pagan with Hebner and Pagan. Chelsea, how are you doing today?
I'm good. You aren't going to be able to get rid of me. People are going to have to hear my voice for a while.
That is a wonderful blessing to have. So it's a Friday. I know it's been kind of a compact week for both of us. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But this is still the start of the year. It's mid-January, but you know, the year is still getting kicked off for a lot of people. And you do some really interesting things around the kind of planning for the year. Um, and not so much the goal setting stuff, but just getting things in alignment so you feel like as you go into the year you have a plan. And I know a lot of my clients when we work together, this is exactly what we've hopefully done by now.
Yeah.
And we do that for probably 80 to 90% of our clients, and a couple of them trickle into the new year.
Mhm.
Um, but that whole idea of it's a new year, a new start, like let's start the year off right is so important. Um, and it's really challenging, especially given all the year-end crush stuff that goes on. Kind of would love to hear from you how you handle year-end and the things that you and Emily do to kick the year off right.
Yeah. And so I'll kind of backtrack and put us to kind of the beginning of December, where we start talking about, what things do we need to accomplish before the end of this specific year to get us ready for planning for the next year. And so while most people say, oh, it's a new start, let's start talking about the year in January, we start that conversation usually end of November, early December, and that starts with a meeting with our CPA to review our numbers for the year. Where are we at? What things can we do right now in December in that current fiscal year to either wrap up some of our goals, meet some of those goals for the prior year, and get ready to have enough information to sit down and set our next year's goals. So that meeting usually happens with our CPA at the beginning of December. And that gives Emily and I a couple weeks to review information, check in with anyone we need to before we close out a fiscal year. One thing Emily and I do is we meet every Wednesday. We have a partnership meeting at lunch, about an hour and a half. We get lunch. We have agenda items for that day. And in the month of December, the first 2 weeks are kind of like, what do we need to wrap up? Are we close to a goal? What can we still accomplish? How can we motivate our team? And then the last 2 weeks, we close our office and go very light workload so that we can focus on, gathering as much information, brainstorming during those last 2 weeks so we can really be ready to meet with our business coach and sit down and say, okay, 2025 is coming. We have our end of 2024 like numbers, our actual KPIs that we can rely on. What do we want our goals to be for 2025? So we've got check mark with our CPA, we've got our weekly, partnership meetings, and then we meet with our business coach at the end of the year to say, okay, here's kind of our strategy and some of the big picture items so that as soon as January 1st comes around, we can start narrowing those down with our business coach and get a little bit more detailed. So that's kind of our year-end planning and where we start. A lot of that drives from the numbers.
That's really dialed in. When you two first partnered up, how was that process, then, and has it changed significantly to get to where it is now?
Oh my God. We had no process for probably the first, I want to say the first like 4-ish years. We kind of just said, how did we do this year? Cool. Like, what do we want to be doing? It was all just so general, and it never really felt like a close of a year and a start of a new one. It was just business as usual. And it took us a while to really start seeing a lot of momentum and being able to understand measurable goals. When you don't have measurable goals as a business owner, you can get very comfortable, which means not only are you getting comfortable in the work you're doing, but you can kind of settle into this comfortable, like, whatever I'm making, I'm making. And that's not how Emily and I view this business. We, of course, want to make more for ourselves. We work hard. We're building a business. We are creating jobs and we have employees who also have families and goals that they want to reach. We have a responsibility to ourselves and to our team to build a successful business so everybody can do better. And we didn't really have that dialed in until we understood that there was a need driving people to our business, meaning people were calling. And that increases the responsibility that you have to provide those better services. So we had to come up with better plans, which started with getting actually a solid team that was going to help us plan more strategically.
And when you were thinking about that solid team, how did you think about building something like that? I assume you probably started with your CPA, but I'm just guessing.
Yep. We
Yep.
started with our CPA, who we absolutely love. We've been with him for a couple years, and he just allowed us to look at, financial planning from a tax perspective in a much bigger way and utilize different opportunities that we have as business owners to not only obviously maximize our tax savings, because that's kind of everybody's, you know, um, goals when it comes to when you think of CPA, but also to maximize the work that everybody was doing so that his job was also easier. So it started with our CPA. It bled into our bookkeepers, who are law firm specific bookkeepers that keep us on track, send us our reports, check in with us, make sure we know what the numbers are. They keep our profit and loss up to date within a week of the close of the month. So we have these numbers almost instantly. It's not going back 6 months and we have to wait to have accurate numbers. We have them usually within a week of the close of the month. Those two pieces alone actually allowed us to start looking at numbers and understand what those are and how to access them. From there, we have our marketing team, which we did something a little different during COVID. We brought on a law firm specific marketing team right in March of 2020 when COVID hit, when everyone kind of was downsizing. They were getting rid of their leases. They were,
Mhm.
cutting employees, cutting costs because there was all this fear of unknown. And we kind of decided to go the other way. We said, look, we've got a credit line for a reason. Let's just invest in a bunch of marketing and, try not to run scared. And that was a huge, step. But we continue to work with the marketing team now, and they have our numbers, who's calling, what's the conversion rate, all of these things. So that's kind of the third piece of the team. And then from there, we added into business coaching, which allowed us to maximize all those team members and ourselves. So we had all these different pieces, but we weren't able to connect them until Emily and I really started connecting ourselves and forcing ourselves to come up with plans, quarterly plans, weekly plans, monthly plans. So we started with our CPA, bookkeeper, kind of the finances, our marketing team, and then it really came down to what were the partners going to do and how were we going to start fine tuning the operations of our business to maximize efficiency.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really cool things about you, both of you, you and Emily, is it's kind of one plus one makes three
Hmm.
between the two of you because you work so well together and you're
Yeah.
very well aligned, and yet you bring different strengths to the table. Um, Trying to do this on your own, like for a lot of firms, they don't have a partner, or the partnership isn't as
Hmm.
cohesive as yours. Maybe
Hmm.
sometimes it might be one plus one equals 1.5
Yes.
instead
Yeah.
of two or three.
Yeah.
And so it can be really, really challenging to do that on their own. But I think the idea is still the same. So even if, if you're a solo attorney or a single partner owned firm and you're listening to this and going, man, I really wish that I had that kind of a partnership that Chelsea and her partner have. You
Hmm.
can do this on your own. It starts with the CPA, and we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Hmm.
Um, Adding in a bookkeeper, business coach, of course,
Hmm.
is a wonderful thing to add. And then other areas too is you need them. At some point, law firm marketing, administrative support, payroll and HR, those kinds of things.
Hmm.
Um, but you can totally do it on your own. Um, for you, Chelsea, that critical first step is getting that CPA. And what I love
Hmm.
about the CPA, sounds like you have, is the CPA is not just someone who will do the taxes, but they're helping you forecast
Yep.
out for subsequent quarters and for the year. and they're probably helping you assess financially how this year has been. And you pair that with bookkeepers who are going to give you numbers when you need it. That's a
Mhm.
recipe for success.
Yeah, it just makes everything less scary, right? I mean, being a business owner is scary. A lot of times there's a lot of responsibility. The risk is all on you. And when you have somebody that says, "Hey, here's some things we can tweak," and it's June, tax time is the stress of tax time is over. Usually we get some kind of updates in June from our CPA if there's any changes in the law, if there's any things that are coming across in his training, we get this information so we can take advantage of it. And then again, with the year-end planning, it's like, "Hey, here's you looking at last year's tax returns. Here's where you guys can spend a little to maximize some benefit. And here's, some tweaks we can make." Um, just knowing that somebody else is looking at our numbers and kind of reaffirming our understanding too, like, "Hey, your business is healthy. Your gross revenue versus your expenses, your payroll to intake, all of these different things. Like, hey, your business is healthy. There's a lot of good things going on here." And sometimes when you're just a business owner and you don't know, and this kind of goes into what we were talking a little bit last time about, other lawyers and business owners not sharing, enough information between themselves and being open so everyone can feel confident to run their business, is you don't know sometimes whether, like, should our profit margins be higher? You can Google, but like every law firm is so different. The
Right.
structure of big law versus more boutique sized law firms. And so when you have a good team that's looking at the numbers and know what your goals are, they're going to say, "Hey, this growth is solid," or "You guys are a little stagnant. How can we make changes?"
Yeah, that's really awesome. And at our level, which is a small law firm, that data is really not available, or if it is, it's going to be
Mm,
really inaccurate. So
yeah.
having that sanity check makes a ton of sense. But you've got to get there. And I know for a lot of attorneys, it can seem really daunting to go from, okay, I'm doing, all the work myself, and I'm either doing the bookkeeping myself or I have my spouse helping me, and then we'll
Mm.
submit it all to the tax person at the end of the year and get it to this idea of having a bookkeeping company and a CPA, now getting the information periodically and then being able to provide it back. That transition scares off a lot of attorneys because it sounds so challenging. It sounds like it's going to take up a lot of their time. How is the transition for you when you added on the CPA and the bookkeeper as far as your time and effort?
Um, to be honest, it was the best decision we ever made, dumping that in. Like, we were just so deep in that, kind of tracking the numbers with a bookkeeper who was just a bookkeeper, and categorizing things, and then they'd check with us. When you make the transition to a bookkeeping team that actually manages it, one, you got to get comfortable with spending money on good people. And that transition, I feel like, was the hardest thing to swallow.
Mm.
Was, okay, we got to come out more money, more expensive CPA, a bookkeeper that we're paying monthly that's much more expensive. But the amount of time and the stress that was taken off our plate for somebody that knew this better than us, right? Because that's the biggest thing. Lawyers think they know a whole lot. We don't. We don't know that much. You gotta have people that you trust. And so for me, there was so much good, but going back to that transition, because that can be hard, it was giving it up and understanding that they were now going to do this job that we spent so much time wasting, which is a good thing, but also controlling. And that is just something that once you get over that initial hump, you realize how much time you just got back and the stress that's off your plate. Like, with lawyers, especially in California, we have a really high reporting requirement for IOLTA and client trust funds. We hold on money that doesn't necessarily belong to us in the form of retainers a lot, or in the form of client money that we're holding while their case is pending. And we have a responsibility to manage that ethically and professionally. And that's where a lot of lawyers can kind of, get into trouble with the state bar. And this was scary. Sometimes we'd see numbers that were off and we're trying to go back and figure out, where did that happen? And there can be huge consequences to that if you're not doing it right. We get all of our reports on a monthly basis, our profit and loss, our IOLTA variant. So if there is a variance, they report it within, like I said, within a week of the month, and we easily fix it. And the state bar is not asking for everyone to be perfect, right? They're asking for you to manage it. And if there's an error, you fix it. And they're like, "Great, I see that happened and everything's okay." all of that has just we don't even think about it. Every couple of weeks I get an email that says, "Hey, please categorize when a new charge comes around." And I go,
Right.
"Beep beep beep," and they go, "Okay." And I never hear about it. And they work with the CPA when the CPA has questions. I don't have to get an email where we're all copied on it and I've got to chime in. Nope, they talk about it in the background. So I can only say good things about that aspect of it because yes, we're paying a little bit more money, but we're making that money back with billable hours that we can actually work on in the case.
Yeah, that's that classic. Why would you be doing a job at 150 that would you could pay someone 150 bucks an hour to do when your billable rate is 450 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to make sense and it was not making sense.
So what is it? I'm really curious about this idea about money and spending money. What is it that makes that concept so hard for so many attorneys to execute on?
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to when Emily and I first opened. And we kind of had a very limited approach to things. We kind of did our own website because we knew a lot of lawyers that didn't really have fancy websites and they were still doing okay. We, were answering the phones ourselves. We were doing our own bookkeeping, all of these little things. And in some capacity, it seems doable when your caseload's not that much, right? And it's kind of fun. You kind of learn it. And I feel like there's so much value in doing a lot of that stuff yourself when
Totally.
you first open a business. You have to kind of understand the work it takes to appreciate it. So I love that we did that. And I know a lot about things I didn't know about when I was just working for other people. So there's so much value there. But I just feel like as a business owner, especially if you set up your business entity correctly, you get a little bit of cushion for risk, meaning you can go into a little bit of debt sometimes in the right places. Luckily, we did that very short term. I said during COVID, we kind of utilized our credit line to really maximize marketing and funnel a bunch of money, but that paid off in tenfold and now we don't carry any debt right now, right? We still have that credit line if for something were to happen, but you get a credit line for a reason. You have that as a backdrop, kind of as a buffer if you need it. And you have to follow your business trends, right? If you're not getting calls, then you have to be willing to spend money to generate calls that are going to make you more than what you're spending. If you're getting a lot of calls, then you need to invest in another employee, not necessarily stop taking cases. Now, that's not right for everyone. We were talking about solo versus
Hmm.
partners. Managing employees is a whole task in and of itself, but you follow the trends of your business and trust that, and you have that team behind you, it's not as scary. And Emily and I, thankfully, we're very different the way we approach finances and we have conversations, but that's what makes us strong is we push and pull and we come to an agreement that everyone feels comfortable with. But the number one place we both agree is it's going to sound so cliche, but you got to spend money to make money. And you just got to try. I'm not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to try something different necessarily. That's definitely not right for everybody. But here and there, just trying things out. I'll take the bookkeepers, for example. I mean, and I can even give numbers because I feel like it's helpful. We pay them about $1,000 a month or something. Very, very reasonable for what I think the value of what they give to us. It sounded like a lot at the time when 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 they came back because
Yeah.
we were only paying $400. So we were like, oh, that's a lot more, but all this value. And now I feel like, oh my God, they're amazing. And so you sometimes have to try and say, is that the right fit for us? And maybe 6 months down the road, you're not seeing the value or you feel like that's not adding up, then you tweak it. I just feel like some business owners get so caught up in it's things are permanent and you could never get it back, or you got to make some mistakes. And some of that includes spending money in the wrong places to know where you can spend money in the right places.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think when you're thinking about risk, right, and investing money in marketing or investing it in growth of some kind, like we're going to
Mhm.
spend some money now because we know we're going to make it up down the road.
Yes.
That's an investment. And there's risk with that investment. And I think the risk is what holds a lot of attorneys back. The funny thing is that law firms, if you look at all of the businesses that are out there, law firms, it's one of the least risky businesses on the planet. I mean, maybe accounting is less risky just from a, hey, if I invest this money, am I going to make it back? But not by much.
Mhm.
Um, there's a huge need for those services. It's just like if you think about what I do, which is coaching, that's incredibly risky from an
Yeah.
investment perspective. You can drop, and I have tens of thousands of dollars and stuff and not get a dime in return. But with law firm marketing, law firm growth, those kinds of investments, the payback on it is something that you can pretty much predict as long as you're not being totally reckless. And if you think it's a big leap, a lot of the stuff is stuff that you can just kind of edge into. You don't
Yeah.
have to go all in. And so a lot of it is thinking about, okay, what investments can I make in the firm that are not going to be a fatal mistake?
Yeah.
If you're making $1 million, you do not want to go out and necessarily blow $200,000 in marketing going from zero,
Right.
because if it's not done right, that money's gone. But you can start at a lower amount, kind of get it dialed in, make sure it's working, and then once it's working, then you can accelerate and contribute more funds. And it's always interesting to me that attorneys get so worried about those types of investments, and it's really not that big of a deal as long as we're able to avoid that big high risk, high investment kind of situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always viewed, especially in family law, like pretty recession proof. There's just people are always going to get divorced, and people aren't going to all of a sudden get smarter about navigating it itself. Not that people are stupid, but like the navigating the family court system and the form, it's a lot for a lot of people. So I've always felt like that's just, and even during COVID, it was more just the unknown of people who already had cases not necessarily wanting to spend their own money and maybe saying, hey, we're getting a divorce, but let's just like not do anything for 6 months. Of course. And a lot of people did that. So I get the mindset of some attorneys, but I'm so thankful that I had a partner where I said, I don't want to run scared. I don't want to fire anyone. I don't, yes, we may need to cut back a little bit in some places where it's just going to be wasted money out, but where can we shift money? And I think we had like 1 month immediately where we kind of gave one of our admins like a month off because we were like, that doesn't make sense. No one's in the office. And then right after that, we were back up and running, I think by mid-April and busier. 2020 was one of our busiest years. And our profit margins were a little tighter because we spent a lot of money, but then that balanced out. So yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I don't know what people are worried about when it comes to that, but I know that it is a consistent worry because I hear it a lot when I talk to
Yeah.
other people.
No, I do too. We work with
Yeah.
owners. They're really scared of hiring that first employee, even hiring someone part-time. They're really concerned about investing in,
Hmm.
online marketing, even a little bit. And they're
Hmm.
really concerned about investing in top-notch professional services that can help them, like
Yeah.
bookkeeping, CPA, business coaching, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, I remember hearing so many people like just chat about a little bit like, oh, we don't pay anything for marketing. We have like a premium Yelp account, Navo. We don't put any money. And by word of mouth, they're busy enough for what their business model is. That's great.
yeah.
And we can pull back at times and we're established enough where we have a good referral source and people are still going to call, but we're in growth mode. I mean, we've only been open for what, 6.5 years. That's like a baby firm, in the scheme of things. And we want to grow, evolve every single year. There's never going to be smooth sailing or like, oh, let's just chill this year and business as usual. That's not Emily and I. We always want to change. And again, that's not for everyone. I get that. But you can make tweaks along the way and it's not going to be the end of the world. You can try one thing here and we've tried and there's been places where I'm like, I think we kind of wasted money there. But it's not like we lost it. It just wasn't as valuable, right? So you just trial and error a lot of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And just
Yeah.
avoid that big fatal mistake and everything
Mhm.
will tend to work out.
Yeah.
Everyone, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I need to upgrade or hire a bookkeeper or CPA, check out Counsel CPAs. They're a sponsor of this podcast. They do great work for back office bookkeeping and tax. Chelsea, thanks so much for being on the
Yeah.
show today. This was a lot
Yeah,
of fun,
absolutely.
and I look forward to our next episode.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Lawyer Business Advantage podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you tune in to listen. And I want to hear from you, so connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know what you think of this episode. And if you are a solo or an owner of a small law firm and you're looking to earn more money, attract better clients, or reduce your stress, we would love to talk with you to see how we can help. Request your free law firm assessment by visiting lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. Again, that URL is lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. We look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you for listening. My name is Alay Yajnik. Until next time, remember, you can seize freedom. You can embrace happiness. You can build your perfect practice.